Hello students of class 12, welcome to this session of English today. Today we'll be taking up this topic, invitation. It's a formal invitation and replying to an invitation. I had recently uploaded some do's and don'ts regarding a formal invitation and replying to a formal invitation. I hope you've gone through it as it will help you to design or to draft an invitation. As you can read here, I've already drafted an invitation for you. It's a formal invitation. Mr. and Mrs. A.N. Gupta, Principal, Degree College, Noida, request the pleasure of the benign presence of Mr. and Mrs. K.L. Kapoor on the occasion of annual day function on 5 June 2020 at 1500 hours at the auditorium. It ends there, and to the left below, left bottom corner, is RSVP, which is a French phrase for responders says follows plate, which means a reply please, in simple words. And then you give the address and the phone numbers to which it has to be replied to. This has to be kept in mind, children, when you're doing this. One of the first things is, if you can see the name there, the name Mr. and Mrs. N. Gupta, the person who's inviting. So you have to highlight it, you have to use bold, and then if you have to attach a designation along with that, like in this case, the inviter is the principal of a degree college, and along with his wife, the principal, he is the principal of the degree college, Noida. And then the words, you have to choose the words very carefully. Requests the pleasure of the benign presence of, now the person whom they're inviting, Mr. and Mrs. K.L. Kapoor, right? And then the occasion for which they are inviting. The occasion here is annual day function on the date. Now the date again has to be mentioned. If it's a single digit date, use 0, 05, 06, 07, like that. Then it comes to 10, 11, and 12, then you can write in double digits. The time, again, if it's a formal invitation, the time has to be like this: 1200 hours, 1300 hours, 1400 hours, 1500 hours, till 2300 hours, 2400 hours. It has to be written like this. And then the place where the event is taking place, like in this case it's the auditorium. Children, you need to understand which are the fonts which you need to highlight here. The inviter, the person who's inviting, that is highlighted here, the font size. Then the person who is being invited, like in this case here it is Mr. and Mrs. K.L. Kapoor. Again, we've kept the font size the same. Then the designation of the inviter, principal, that is kept in bracket just below the name, Principal Degree College, Noida. Now that is kept in bracket along with the font size. Now it's reduced font size, it's a different font size. Like, and then the event here in this case is annual day function, which again has been highlighted, right? So these are the few do's and don'ts which you need to take care, right? Here we can understand this has been made on a laptop, so it comes out like this. But when you are doing it for the exams, you are not supposed to use any color. You'll just leave it as it is. Don't color it, don't use any other pen, just use a simple blue point pen. But yes, use different font sizes, different font styles. Font size, don't use your regular handwriting. Need to keep that in mind. Don't use your regular handwriting, and don't use the first person or the second person. Here the inviter, the person who is inviting, Mr. and Mrs. N. Gupta, they are not saying I or we. They're using third persons for themselves, right? Request, now they are inviting the person as the third person. So you need to keep that in mind. And yes, these are the details which you need to keep in mind when you're designing a invitation. Then next we'll be taking up replying to a formal invitation. When you're accepting somebody's invitation, here we need to understand that to respond to an invitation, it's considered an essential part of a social ethique, although many of us do not. But it is always good to respond to an invitation. either you can accept the invitation or you can reject it. In this case, we'll see how to write when you are accepting a formal invitation. Here, now, Mr. and Mrs. K.L. Kapoor thank Mr. and Mrs. A.N. Gupta for the formal invitation to the annual day function and delightfully accept it. Now they've accepted that invitation and they've written it like this. Uh, the people who have considered and accepted the invitation, whom they're thanking for inviting them, and they also state whether they're accepting it or whether they're rejecting it. In this case, rejecting this is declining it. Here they've stated that they're willing to come. So again, the people, the names have been highlighted. And now the central alignment, again children, you need to understand, you have to maintain the central alignment. Don't take it to your extreme left, the entire uh, text, or to your entire left or to your entire right. You have to keep that central alignment. So for this, what you do is, when you make this box, fold the box, fold the page from the center of the box. So that will give you a central alignment. And then whatever you write half on the left and half on the right. So that will help you to keep the central alignment. Okay. So here, this was a sample of how they accept an invitation. And this the font size, again, the font size and the font style, you need to understand which font, which are the content which has to be highlighted, and the content which has to be highlighted, you can increase the font size, and which need not be, you can keep it small. Okay, so this is this. And after this, we'll be considering the next factor, that is, what do you do when you have to decline somebody's invitation. We'll come to the next part after you've understood this. If you still have any queries, you can post your queries to me anytime. Right, we'll move on to the next segment now. This is replying when you have to decline an invitation. That also a formal invitation. Like I told you, it's important to either accept somebody's invitation and inform the person, or decline somebody's invitation and then again inform that person. It's considered to be a part of a social ethic. Okay, in this case, the person has to decline a formal invitation. Now, how do you design that? Again, you have to draw this rectangular box in the same way. Fold the page from the center, so that you are able to maintain that center alignment. And once you folded the page from the center of the box, you can write the content now. Like he's written, Mr. and Mrs. K.L. Kapoor thank Mr. and Mrs. A.N. Gupta for the kind invitation, but regret their inability to attend the function due to prior commitments. They, however, wish them luck for the function. Okay, now again, if you see here, the people who were invited, like in this case, it was Mr. and Mrs. K.L. Kapoor. They are thanking Mr. and Mrs. A.N. Gupta for the kind invitation, but they regret their inability to attend the function due to prior commitments. They, however, wish them luck for the function. Okay, now they have expressed their inability to attend. Why? Because of any reason, because of prior commitments. Like formally, we generally write, we don't have to state the exact reason. We generally write, due to prior commitments, we will be unable to come. Okay, and they, however, wish them. Now, see, they've used they for themselves. For their own self, they're using they as a third person. They, however, wish them luck for the function. Now, that is being polite. That's being courteous. Just because they were not able to come, they've still thanked them. Right? You can post your queries